let's get into the Twins manager search, or at least what we
Let's
know
do it.
about it.
Yep.
So, a bunch of names have been reported by Dan Hayes and Bobby Nightingale and Lavelle Neal and various other people. Um, I'm guessing there are at least a name or two that haven't been reported, but I don't know that obviously to be the case. What we do know, there's about a half dozen guys that we can kind of go point by point here and at least give you the outline of what they are and what we know about them and why the Twins might be interested in them. So let's start with some ex members of Rocco Baldelli's coaching
I was
staff.
going to say, let's,
Seems like
yeah,
the
I
logical
like,
place.
I'm interested to see how you group these. Yeah. Go ahead.
So number one, let's start with Derek Shelton,
Right.
who actually was a member of Molitor's coaching staff and stayed when Molitor got fired and Baldelli got hired, and then was the bench coach in 2019 under Baldelli, and
Yeah.
then later got hired away to be the Pittsburgh Pirates manager.
Yes.
And he just got fired as the Pirates manager. Derek Shelton is one of those baseball lifer guys. He was with Cleveland. He was with Tampa Bay. He was with the Twins. I'm probably forgetting places too. And he's one of those guys that is, you look at him and you go, there's a baseball guy. He's got the beard. He's a little bit of a gruff demeanor. He's a big
Yep.
dude, all this stuff. Like I don't want to say he's intimidating because my experience with him is he's a good dude, but he's definitely, you look at him and you go, oh, this is one of those leader of men type of guys. Like this is one of those
Sure.
guys. And it's like, he has managing experience and he was just fired in the middle of this season.
Yeah. You what?
Like,
3 years with the Pirates,
no, more than
basically.
that,
4 years.
6 years, six
Wow.
years,
Okay.
uh,
Wow. Okay.
2020 until June of this year
Wow.
or whatever it was, or May of this year.
You should get an award just for lasting
Yeah.
6 years with the
Well,
Pirates.
this is the thing that like bumps me a little bit off from his candidacy. I think he's obviously got a track record with the Twins. I think he might have been in Cleveland when Falvey was in Cleveland too. He's definitely a well-respected baseball guy. I can tell you that. I find him to be an interesting guy. The players back then seemed to like him. It would see he's certainly a retread in that he had 5.5 years as a manager,
Sure.
and he's I think he's like in his mid 50s, something like that. The problem though is like, I'm certainly willing to sit here and give someone leeway for not being able to win with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Right.
And he had 306 wins and 440 losses. That's pretty bad. And they didn't get higher than fourth place in the 5-team NL Central. And I think I'm looking, the most they ever won was 76 games. He didn't even
Mhm.
have a 500 record with them.
Right.
Now I'm willing to say, who can win with the Pirates.
Sure.
But here's the problem. Isn't this a similar situation?
Well, it could
I,
be.
I'm not saying the Twins are the Pirates, but they're closer to
No.
the Pirates than they were 3 years ago, or 10 years ago even. And
Sure.
if you're willing to say like, well, what'd you want them to do? The Pirates have a bottom five payroll, and they don't bring in veterans to support their young talent, and they struggle to develop hitters and all this sort of stuff, which is all true. That's why a 410 winning percentage is misleading, probably.
Sure.
But aren't the
But
Twins
you
kind
just
of
mentioned three
right?
potential criticisms of the Twins, the same one. So
Yeah. And so what's different? If I were interviewing him for the Twins job, I would want to say to him, and I guess
how
this
are
would
we going to be different than the
right.
Pirates?
Now this would require the Twins officials sort of admitting that they're trending towards Pirates territory, which
Right.
maybe they are less willing than me to say that. But I definitely would want to say like, what have you learned from that you can apply to this, or what approach would you take differently? Do you think you made mistakes with the Pirates, or do you think it was just a lost cause? And if it was a lost cause for 5.5 years, which I'm willing to believe it was, kind of tell me why this isn't a similar lost
Sure. Right.
cause. And
Yeah.
you can't even say, well, yeah, the Twins are that way now, but they have so much young talent. I mean, the Pirates have Paul Skeens, and they had some pretty good young
Sure.
players over the last 5 years. They've just, the infrastructure of the rest of the roster has just been so lacking and not invested in, and they can't develop any hitters and all that. So I don't know. I think he's intriguing. I definitely am not surprised that he's someone they're interviewing.
Right. I mean, he was one of the names we were coming up with
Right.
before we actually heard he was part of it. Right.
Right. The other one who was also on that 2019 staff with Derek Shelton is James Rowson, who was the hitting coach of that 2019 Bomba squad under Baldelli.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I have the timeline right that Rowson was hired away from the Twins after the 2019 season by the Miami Marlins because they gave him a promotion and they made him the bench coach and I think the hitting coordinator or something like that. And what was interesting about that, you say, well, yeah, if a guy's going to get promoted and more money and more responsibility, it's hard to block that in sports. That's, it's not a lateral move. But the interesting thing is at the moment the Marlins hired James Rowson after 2019, they offered him the bench coach job. Well, the Twins couldn't offer him the bench coach job in that exact moment because Derek Shelton.
Right.
But then within that same offseason, and I think it was pretty quick
you're
after
right.
Rowson
you're
left,
right. You got
then
it right.
Shelton left the bench coach job to become the Pirates manager.
Right.
And then it was like, well, hell, if that would have happened in reverse, or there would have been a month delay for both of those, I feel like it would have been pretty obvious of them to just be like, well, we'll match that. You can be our bench coach too, to James Rowson.
That's right.
So Rowson went to Miami, and Twins fans complained about that, even though the Marlins didn't really hit and didn't really have success. Although that's similar to the Pirates situation where it's like, what do you want him to do? It's the Marlins.
I'm taking a look. I just took a look at the dates right now. Yes, James Rowson was hired on October 24th, almost exactly 6 years ago today, to be the bench coach of the Marlins underneath Don Mattingly. And then, yes, Derek Shelton was hired 1 month later on November 27th to be the manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, and I remember talking at the time, and they felt like their staff had been sort of decimated. And then in that same, I think they lost Jeremy Hefner to the Mets and some other things.
Yeah,
and then that led to, well, not a shakeup with the coaching staff, but they had to hire some guys that maybe they weren't as thrilled with. He leaves the Marlins. I think he was I don't know if he was with Detroit for a year, but he ends up as the Yankees hitting coach recently. And that's a pretty prominent job. But I also, and this goes back to my point, I'm not even really talking about specific candidates, but it goes back to my point that no one knows. In the same way you can say, well, what'd you expect Shelton to do in Pittsburgh? Or what'd you expect Rowson to do with the Marlins hitters? Well, okay, he was the Yankees hitting coach. Well, they hit great. Did he, fix Aaron Judge, or was Aaron Judge, he's been amazing this whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
That's part of the blurriness of evaluating coaches.
Right.
That I think.
Well, you're also not hiring him as the hitting coach. You're hiring him as the actual manager.
And this is something too that a guy can be. You see it in football all the time. A guy's an amazing offensive coordinator. It's a lot different when he's the head coach,
right?
Because sometimes he's not even calling plays, and if he is, you're dealing with other stuff, which is why you see in football a lot of times, if a offensive coordinator gets hired as the head coach, they'll often bring in a veteran defensive coordinator to just run that side of the team. We can't really do that in baseball. And it's why, a guy like Shelton, who can be an amazing hitting coach or a really good bench coach, that sort of thing, it's a whole different story when you're trying to manage. A guy like Rowson, who has now had a lot of success as a hitting coach in different places, well, he's never been a major league manager. It's a whole different story. His strength as a hitting coach might not be the same as the strengths needed to run the team on a day-to-day basis. But then the other side is there isn't as much opportunity for him to influence the hitters.
Right.
Because he's managing the team.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Gleeman